The on-the-road M3 is a great light for everyday carry because it's got high output and can light up an entire park, trail, or sidewalk very well, even when compared to a larger high-quality light like the Convoy S2+. The S2 is considered one of the best 18650 flashlights out there right now, and the M3 can hold its own against that or put out the same amount of light or even more light, which is crazy. The M3 even has 8 different modes, so it's got more modes than the S2+. This flashlight's very easy to use, and you can hold it to turn on, hold it to turn off, double click to go to turbo, triple click to go to strobe, and then single click to go between locator beacon, and another single click to go to SOS. And then hold it for half a second to turn it off. So it's very easy to use and very functional. It reads 41 lux on the luxometer, which is more than some of the Convoy S2 Pluses I've tested. And it puts out even more light than the Convoy L2, which has an XPL HI LED in there. It's a thrower, so that's probably why it's losing some of its efficiency on the reflector, but it's pretty crazy that this little tiny light can output more than this massive L2. So it might sound too good to be true, but with a good quality flashlight, it also comes with a good quality lithium-ion battery. That's what allows it to push out all the amps, push out all the power, and get a lot of light out of this flashlight. Without a good battery, it's not going to work very well. But this is a very good high quality battery, and it puts out a lot of amps, has a low internal resistance, and has a huge capacity inside it. It says it's 700 milliamps. I've tested it with a fluke meter, and it actually gets 799 milliamp hours. And the crazy thing is that this battery is better than the ones you can buy for $10, like the O-Light or the Night Core. Those are only rated for 650, and they actually hold less energy than the on the road. So this is a good battery, it's a good flashlight, puts out a lot of power. It even comes with a battery charger, which can plug into 100 to 240 volts, so you can charge it for all around the world. And it also plugs into any USB port, so you can use it with a battery pack, laptop, wherever you travel you can plug into USB. The flashlight even has a magnet in the tail, so you can stick it on the wall, filing cabinets, whatever, your car. It also comes with a nice clip, so you can clip it to a hat, to a shirt, to even your pants, so you can put the light where you want it, keep both of your hands free and carry or do whatever you have to do. So if you're looking for a good compact flashlight, this one has all the features, and you should seriously take a look at getting this little tiny beast. I got mine from GearBest, and you can purchase it from other places as well, and I like the warmer color temperature rather than the cooler color temperature, but it depends on what you want. I put in the description a link to the one I purchased, so you can check that out if you want to get it. So to start out my review, I'm going to do a quick comparison. As you can see here, first thing we look at is LED. This one uses a Cree Xml2, so it's the newer version of the XML, and that's what all high quality flashlights would use. The next figure is the lumens that it's rated at, and actually I think this is underrated. It's probably putting out more than 920 lumens. All of them are probably around 1000. Using our David Sunshine luxometer, we tested it to 41 lux, which is pretty comparable to all the other high powered flashlights here. It beat the Convoy L2, which is pretty impressive, and it's falling short against the Convoy C8, which is understandable since those are pretty high quality flashlights. The light distribution is a very important figure for flashlights, so if you want to use the light in everyday carry, you probably want to use it in trails, parking lots, sidewalks, stuff like that. A 21 degree beam angle and an 89 degree field angle is pretty standard for those kind of lights, and that should work fine. If you want a thrower, of course you want to go with the L2 because it's got a 6 degree beam, and that's just super tight, super intense, and you can throw half a kilometer no problem with that. But the M3 is comparable to S2+, so if you're using one of those already, you can imagine a similar distribution to that, and a similar intensity because it's getting 41 lux. Now the user interface and the functionality is what makes this M3 very good. I like the side switch because you don't have to change your handhold of the flashlight to change the mode and then go and direct it. It's got 8 modes instead of the Convoy's 3 or 5, which is pretty handy to have. It's got memory, so it remembers if you're on low, medium, or high, you can go to turbo and then jump back to that no problem. And here's a quick chart showing how everything works. And the driver is high quality because it has high pulse width modulation. That means it doesn't show flickering, but the important thing to note with this flashlight is you don't notice any flickering to the human eye because it's a high pulse width modulation frequency. Now the build quality of this flashlight's pretty good, and by taking it apart, I see everything in there is done well. There's thermal grease, there's grease, the O-rings are high quality, threads are high quality, nice and square. Everything's made very well, but I took one point off because the stainless steel bezel at the front actually was a little sharp and the corner wasn't nice and rounded. I had to take some 600 grit sandpaper and sand that down myself. So that's why it got 9 out of 10, but once you sand that down, it basically is a 10 out of 10. And the Convoy lights are all 10 out of 10 because they're just really high quality lights. I gave it a pretty high grade for thermal management, even though it's a small light, and it gets pretty hot very quickly. But since this has a low mode, it doesn't get hot in low, and if you do go to turbo, it reduces its power output by a little bit just to reduce the heat load on the flashlight. I tested that out, and it seems to be reducing the current based on temperature. It does have some thermal management there, so I give it a pretty high score. Now, new LED flashlights have the ability to punch out a lot of light when it needs to, but then they can use pulse width modulation to dim the light, and the more it dims it, the longer it'll last. So if you're caught in a power outage and you need to use the light all night long, this thing can actually do that because you can go to ultra low mode and it's rated for 70 hours. I calculated it to be around 46 hours, but it's a lot longer than the Convoy S2 Plus or the C8 because it's an ultra low mode instead of just a low mode. And then the Convoy L2 does very well because it's a big light and has two large 5.2 amp hour batteries in there, so it can last 157 hours on low. Now, taking a look at the price of the on the road, it's around 25 bucks, and that's pretty cheap considering you're getting a $10 battery and then a $5 charger. So you're really only paying $10 for the flashlight, and it's a hell of a flashlight for only 10 bucks. The kit also comes with a neoprene pouch, and that's probably worth 2 bucks right there. So the flashlight is only 8 bucks, which is dirt cheap for something of this high quality. So I'm going to have to say that the value for the dollar is 10 out of 10. All these lights is 10 out of 10 except for the L2, which is sort of expensive, but you're paying a premium for the thrower. So it's a crazy spotlight and it uses the newer LED to achieve that. It's going to get a 9 out of 10 for me because I'm not really into throwers that much. I don't have much of a use for a large flashlight that's just a spotlight, but for those people who use the thrower, then you're going to probably rate it 10 out of 10. Oh yeah, that's like a laser beam. So the L2 is the thrower that you want. So if you see way over here, you can see a wascally wabbit about 100 meters away. No problem. The L2 lights it up real good. So all these lights are high quality, and if you choose any of these lights, you're not going to be disappointed. And then I wanted to just quickly say what the intended purpose of each of these lights are, because they're all different sizes, they all do different things, and the on-the-road M3 is good for everyday carry because it's so small and powerful, and then the Convoy S2 is a little bigger, so I wouldn't say it's for everyday carry, but it's a good utility light, does everything out there. It does a little of everything, but doesn't do anything exceptionally well. And then the Convoy C8 is a mix between a utility light and a spotlight. So it's a thrower, but it's kind of not that much of a thrower, and it's kind of a utility light. You can use it in trails, it won't blind you with its hotspot, and it can throw, but it won't throw as good as an L2. And then the L2 is only good as a spotlight, and it's really big, so you're not going to use it as a utility light or everyday carry. So that's a quick overview of everything. Let's take a look at the finer details. So right out of the box, you see a neoprene case, which holds the flashlight. And this is an awesome case. It's thick neoprene, so you can throw it into a backpack or hang it off your backpack. And it's perfect as a gift for your wife or your girlfriend because it's not too heavy. They can carry it in their purse. It won't damage anything else. And when they need it, they can bust it out and they can use it in ultra low mode to read a book, or they can punch it out to turbo and walk down the sidewalk and be seen no problem. The first thing you notice about the flashlight is the nice strong clip. And it's also got a nice magnet in the tail so you can put it anywhere you need. Comes with a nice charger that plugs into 100 to 240 volt AC, or you can just plug it into any USB source. And I like to charge it from a battery pack because I'm always on the go. And you always have a laptop or a computer, so you can always charge it from those ports as well. It's a very handy little charger, and it does charge to 4.3 volts, which is not good for most lithium ions, but I assume the 700 milliamp hour battery can handle it. And it seems like it can because it doesn't heat up at all when it goes to 4.3 volts. It also includes a good 700 milliamp hour battery, which is tested to 799 milliamp hours. Comes with spare O-rings in case these O-rings break, and it comes with a lanyard as well, which I don't use because I just keep it in my pocket or clip it to my pants. So let's charge this thing up, put in the battery, and test out the beam shots. So in looking at the beam on the wall, it's got a beam angle of 21 degrees and a field angle of 89 degrees, which is the widest of all the flashlights I've got, and it even looks wider than the Convoy S2 Plus when compared side to side. I like the wider beam angle because typically if you're walking down a sidewalk you want to have good peripheral vision, and when you're working on stuff in the car you want to have a nice floodlight as well because you're going to be close up to things. So this is probably going to be my favorite go-to light for just working on the car, walking around, mostly anything except for long distance throws. The M3 and the S2 Plus both have medium orange peel reflectors, so you can see a nice gradient between the beam and the field angles. And then when you look at the C8 and the L2, they have smooth reflectors and they're just mainly focused on getting a nice tight beam. And when you have a nice tight beam, you can punch the light out really far and hit a building with it, but if you're not doing that, then you're not going to want a nice tight beam. And it should be noted that the L2 achieves this nice tight beam using a new XPL HI, high intensity LED. It's a smaller LED than the Xml2, and that's what makes it a better thrower because it's more intense, it's more of a point source, and that's what you need when you want to throw light into a reflector and focus it into one position or one spot. If you have a wider source, then it's going to be more of a floody kind of beam, and that's why the C8 is actually a little more loose of a beam. The XPL HI also has no dome, so it's more of a wide angle distribution that allows more of the light to hit the reflector, and that allows more light to get reflected down the middle by that reflector. So if you're using an XML2, don't expect too tight of a beam. You'll want to upgrade that to a XPL HI. So once again, the M3 has the orange peel reflector, and as you can see it makes for a nice smooth gradient to the outside, which is handy to have, and I recommend that distribution for most people. There are some people out there who want a thrower, and that's when the C8 and the L2 come into play. But the M3 is good at lighting up the sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and driveways and stuff. It's basically good for when you're walking around, which is when you're probably going to use your light anyways. Camping, hiking, walking trails, all that stuff. So we'll test it out in the park here and see how well it lights up the entire park.
This is on ultra low, you can't see anything. This is on low, 150 lumens. 300 lumens. Medium, and then high, 600 lumens. And then when you want, you double click and you get turbo. So on turbo, this thing is pretty bright. It does get warm, but it'll drop back down to high once it gets pretty hot. So you can easily see this tree, this further tree, and then the tree down in the middle between those ones are pretty far away, and you can't really see those. Turbo is obviously the best, but it does get hot and it's not for extended use, so you want to drop it back down to medium or something, or even low. Now we'll compare it to the Convoy S2 Plus. This is on high, so it's pretty comparable to the Convoy S2 Plus, and this one's running at 4.5 amps or so right now with the battery that it's got in there. You can see this tall tree, no problem. Medium tree, no problem, and then far distance tree, you can see it with your naked eye, but probably not the camera. And now we got the Convoy L2. It's a thrower, and let's see how well it goes. Yeah, the L2 is definitely the thrower that you'll want. Here we've got the Convoy C8 Xml2 Flashlight. This one's a pretty good thrower. And on high you can see this tree no problem. It's not as intense as the L2. Here's the medium tree, and here's actually the farthest away tree in the middle, and it can light that up no problem. The C8 is definitely a good thrower. We've got the Skyray King here. This is on high, and you can basically see everything. It's a 75 or 85 watt flashlight, so if you want a super powerful flashlight, check out the Skyray King.
So the M3 is a pretty good everyday carry flashlight, but it definitely doesn't give you a lot of runtime with high power, and it definitely doesn't give you throw or massive amounts of light. If you want massive amounts of light, get the Skyray King 7x XML2 flashlight. If you want throw, the Convoy L2 is the one to go with. It pretty much shoots a laser beam of LED light all the way down. It can light up a building half a kilometer away, no problem. The Convoy C8 is kind of like the little brother of the L2. It can punch quite a bit of light out, but it's got a smaller reflector, so it doesn't look quite as bright as the L2. If you want small form factor and runtime, go with the Convoy S2 Plus, and make sure you get the 3500 mAh battery. That'll give you a lot of runtime and a lot of power.
it can last an hour and a half on high, no problem. But it does get hot, so if you need a lot of power for a long time and you don't want it to get hot, get a bigger flashlight, because the bigger the flashlight, the more heat it can dissipate and it won't burn your hand. So a Skyray King running on low or medium can actually run for a very long time and it won't get hot. So if you need to do a lot of trail walking and stuff and you want massive amounts of light, go with the Skyray King. On high this thing still gets pretty hot, but on medium and low it'll be fine. So there's a different flashlight for every application. Massive amounts of light, a spotlight or a thrower, a small light that's a thrower and a utility light, and then a small compact everyday carry. This is definitely the flashlight that I'm going to carry with me every day because it fits in your pocket no problem and is about the size of a chapstick. The Convoy S2 Plus is pretty good, but carrying this one around is a little bit too big. This is a very high powered flashlight and you have to be careful with it because it'll burn through plastic in no time flat. So if you have this in your polyester pockets, it'll burn through that, so be careful with it. Make sure you lock it out by turning the back, then you won't accidentally push it on if it's in your pocket. So be careful with that. The magnet in the tail cap is pretty handy because you can stick it to things, cars, refrigerators, whatever you need to do, panels, but there's no magnet on the side. So if you actually grab a little magnet, this one came out of a brushless motor from an RC plane, and take the clip off, stick that on the clip. I'm going to put it right about here in the center between this curve and this bump. Put in a 5mm heat shrink. Make sure you get that in the right spot and then just heat it up. You can use black tape, but heat shrink looks a lot better. It's much more durable and it doesn't degrade over time that easily. Black tape usually gets all sticky and doesn't work very well after a while. You can easily attach it to the side of metal objects and then you can check your tread depth and things like that. And of course this thing is waterproof, down to a meter. So I hope you enjoyed that quick review video. Thanks for watching, and I hope that helps. So I've got the exposure locked, but it looks pretty dark even though the room is well lit, because the flashlight here, the on the road M3, is very bright. And you can see the beam angle and the spill is perfectly with this exposure. So here's the on the road M3, and compared to the Convoy S2 Plus, it's actually quite comparable. This Convoy S2 Plus has a warm white LED in there, and the driver's been modified to put out more current, so it's a little bit brighter, but not by much. So this beam angle is a little tighter than this one, it appears, and the field angle of the M3 is actually a little bit further, the Convoy S2 Plus.